Hello everybody, welcome back to CNS Corvettes in beautiful sunny Sarasota, Florida. It's your Corvette buddy Lyle here to talk to you about more interesting, exciting, and hopefully helpful Corvette stuff. Today we are doing one of our favorite segments to do. This is round 3, I think, round 4, says Tony, of answering your questions that have been submitted through the comments to our videos. I have not seen these questions yet, but I'm going to go into the CNS Corvettes trucker head of mystery, pull them out one by one, and answer them to the best of my ability. So, let's have some fun. First question of the day. Lyle, clearly you come across an abundance of Corvettes for sale. Have you considered expanding your business model to include consignment sales? You are trusted. If you say the car has been gone through, followed by a comprehensive assessment, it would matter to pilgrims like me. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the compliment. I really appreciate that. Our constraint on car sales, car consignment, and even just expanding our business is unfortunately limited by the size of our building. We only have a 5,500 square foot building, which everything that we do in our company, except for vintage part storage in a separate warehouse, everything has to happen here. And in our area, a building of the size that we need to do all these things is about $3 to $4 million just for an empty metal building. And that's just not within our budget, unfortunately. So while we help people find ways to sell their cars, we can recommend a lot of outlets online that are good and reliable. We rarely take cars on consignment just because we have nowhere to put it, unfortunately. Question number 2. I'm buying a 1982 with the Crossfire Injection. Is there anything I can do to help it stay running smooth? Well, yes, there are several things you can do. You want to make sure that your fuel pressure coming to the throttle bodies is between 13 and 15 psi. One of the main problems you have with the Crossfire cars is as that pump in the fuel tank ages and gets weak, it's not providing enough fuel pressure to the throttle bodies. And a lot of people, when they do need to replace that pump, actually replace it with a pump from an 85 or up TPI engine to make sure that there's enough fuel pressure. Also, you want to make sure that the throttle bodies are synchronized. I'm not going to explain how to do that here, but there are several videos online showing you how to do that. And I would say the number one thing is vacuum leaks. As you know, in the C3s, the headlights, all the AC, HVAC, valving, everything's run through vacuum. And if there are leaks or breaks in the hoses in that system, you're going to have unmetered air coming into or out of the system, which makes the car run rough and can make it run really hot. So make sure you don't have any vacuum leaks. That's pretty much it. Question number 3. For a future Q&A, which evidently is today, I have a relatively low mileage 2002 C5 base automatic with 56,000 miles. Nice. The transmission fluid has never been serviced. Do you think it is still okay, or should I change the fluid as soon as possible? I drive the car about 3,000 miles per year. In my past experience, transmission fluid doesn't typically degrade with time, but more so with heat. So I'm not overly concerned unless you say otherwise. Hello from Tampa Bay. Well, hello from Sarasota. Honestly, guys, I don't think you should keep any fluid in your car more than 10 years. And honestly, for things like brake fluid, coolant, 2 to 5 years is all the time you should keep the fluid in the car. This gentleman is correct in that transmission fluid doesn't necessarily wear down from sitting, but I mean, we're talking 20 plus years here, guys. You can't keep fluid in a car that long. Just to make sure that everything stays fresh and the car stays healthy, it's also a great time to refresh any of the gaskets or seals that may be drying out and cracking with age, and maybe prevent leaks before they even start. Yeah, 2 to 5 years is it for fluids. Question number 4. I have a 1992 6-speed with 74,000 miles. What clutch combination would you suggest, and should I keep the dual mass flywheel? For street driving, for normal driving, you know, having fun on the street and stuff, not track work, not racing, Luke, L-U-K, I mean, it has something called a rep set, which is the pressure plate and the clutch assembly and the disc and all that. That is your best bet for quality OEM level clutch for street driving. As far as the dual mass flywheel goes, you almost have to test the flywheel out of the car to see if it is still healthy. The way you test that is on a dual mass flywheel, you have a center hub and then you have the face of the flywheel, the plate out here. that center mass should shift just a little bit like this, just maybe a quarter to a half an inch. If it moves more than that, that dual mass flywheel is probably on its way out. Unfortunately, there are no replacements for that. Nobody makes a dual mass flywheel. So what people have to do is they have to go with a solid, like Fidanza or other companies who make a solid aluminum flywheel or steel flywheel for this. And they work, but they are a lot noisier overall than the dual mass flywheel. The dual mass flywheel was there to quiet down the ZF, which was a clunky, loud transmission to begin with. So I would say if your dual mass flywheel is even marginally within specs for the amount of movement that it's giving you, reuse it. Otherwise, your only choice is to go with the single mass flywheel. Question number 5. Do I need a front end alignment when I drop the steering rack to replace the harmonic balancer? No, you don't, because you're not changing the location of the tie rod ends. That is what you adjust to get the alignment. So if you unbolt the suspension knuckles from that and then move the steering rack either out of the way or just hang it from the radiator support, which we do on certain models, you shouldn't need an alignment because everything's going to bolt up precisely where it was. It can only bolt in one way. Now, if you determine that your tie rod ends, the boots are all chewed up or they look ugly or for whatever reason you're going to change tie rod ends while you have access, then yes, you would need an alignment. Question number 6. Where is the best place to start to identify a leak location in the power steering system on a 1977 C3? I do know it is leaking because my driveway looks like a power steering murder crime scene and I don't want to just start replacing parts. I have heard of using dies but have not done this before. You don't need dies to diagnose leaks on a power steering system. On a C3, there are basically 4 major components that you need to look at. You have the power steering pump itself. You then have 4 power steering hoses that route the fluid between the power steering control valve, the power steering slave assist cylinder, and the pump itself, and it's all in that system. So the best way to do this is obviously get the car up into the air, wipe or spray everything down with brake clean, make sure there's no fluid residue anywhere. Then while the car's on the lift, start the car and move the wheel back and forth, spin it, and just keep an eye on what leaks and then replace it. Thankfully, everything is very accessible under the car. You can see everything right there, basically just to the inside of the left front wheel. It's all on display once you're under the car. Locating that and changing the parts won't be a big deal. Question number 7. I have a 1998 and you say that there is a brake part that GM no longer makes. Have you thought about finding someone to manufacture them? You would be the go-to guy for C5 owners with this issue. Yes, we would. And we did investigate this. This gentleman's talking about the electronic brake control module on the 97 to the 2000 Corvette, which is by and large unrebuildable when it fails. Steve and I were at SEMA several years ago, and we had a sit down with the representatives from Bosch who made that system originally, and we asked them this exact question. What would it take for you guys to make more of these for these cars out here? And they said, we are more than willing to make them. However, each unit is going to cost $1,800, and we will only make them if you commit to 10,000 of them. Now, for those of you at home who are not incredibly mathematically talented, that comes out to $18 million. Yeah, if I can't afford a $3 million building, I definitely can't afford $18 million worth of electronic modules. This is why you will never see those modules reproduced. Unfortunately, I don't know what's ever going to happen if somebody ever will come up with a foolproof method of rebuilding them. But at this point here, 20 some years on, probably not. Question number 8. This is a question about torque tube stuff on C5s, C6s, and C7s. Is the billet coupler on the torque tube a good choice over the polyurethane bushings? 100% yes. If you're not going to use the factory style rubber, definitely go with either the replacement drive shaft from Hinson Motorsports that eliminates couplers completely, or if you're going to maintain couplers and use your original drive shaft, go with the billet aluminum. The polyurethane ones, they were called kind of like the 6-shooter because they kind of look like the back end of a revolver. They have had serious problems with those over time because polyurethane doesn't respond well to the heat and the constant thrashing that goes on in that torque tube. They've also had problems with the aluminum frame that the bushings are in failing. So I would stay away from those. If you need something stronger than rubber, because you're making a lot of horsepower or you're racing or whatever, go with a minimum the billet couplers, or really if you want to solve this problem once and for all, spend the $1,100 and get the drive shaft that just eliminates the couplers completely. Especially if you're racing the car, pushing it hard all the time, that's your answer. Hi Lyle, I have a 1981 C3 factory 4-speed. I'm concerned that at 65 miles an hour, I'm running 2,400 RPMs and it seems high to me. I'm considering swapping out the 4-speed manual for a Tremec 5-speed to drop the RPM and save my original engine. Has CNS done this swap and do you recommend it? First, no, we don't do that kind of swap here, but I will tell you that changing over to a 5-speed transmission, especially the one from Tremec, is very popular in the C2 and the C3 cars. I know that it will make driving the car on modern roads and modern traffic conditions a lot easier. It's not going to be cheap, but it is a very viable solution to having just the engine running far too high in the RPM range when you're driving at 75 miles an hour down the highway. I don't know of any shops locally that are doing that, but I think if you do some internet searching or sleuthing, you can find the people who are conversant in that conversion and reach out to them and either have them do it or have them recommend someone closer to your home that may be able to do it for you. Question number 10. Have you guys done valve guides and heads off of an LS7 motor? No, we have not. We don't do that kind of deep engine work here. And I do answer this question frequently to all of the people who watch our YouTube video who have an LS7 in their C6 Z06. I always recommend people talk to K-Tech Engineering. They are the experts when it comes to this, and they can provide the heads, they can fix your heads, but that is definitely something I leave to the guys who've been doing it for years and who knows those engines backwards and forwards. Finally, we have question number 11, bonus question today. Question is, will C8 Z06 models end up like the C4 ZR1 in terms of value based on limited parts for the LT5 and LT6 engine? I don't think that's going to be a problem specifically with the engine because the engine is still built 100% by GM. The C4 ZR1's engine was designed by Lotus and built by Mercury Marine. So it was kind of subcontracted out to companies that weren't under GM's direct control. I think that these engines will be, parts for these engines and knowledge about these engines will remain at the forefront for at least the next 10 to 20 years, because I think some variation of these engines is going to be present in all the Corvettes to come. I think that there will be parts to those cars that do go discontinued after 5-10 years. But importantly, I think we've reached the point in pretty much all modern cars, especially 2020 and newer cars, not just Corvette. I don't know that we're going to be a culture that keeps cars for 10, 15, 20 years like we always used to. And I've always kept my cars way too long because I form a bond with them and they're important to me. They're members of the family. But I think that you're going to see Corvette ownership specifically and car ownership in general is going to start compressing down to a smaller period of time, 5 to 10 years at most, because people aren't going to want to deal with these cars out of warranty because of how complex and advanced they are. Just my guess. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. Do you think that the C8, Z06, and ZR1 are going to be a problem in the future? Or do you think that because they're built entirely in-house at GM that maybe they'll get better support than the C4 ZR1? I don't know. What do you think? Thanks for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this. I had a good time with it. And now it's time for me to get back to work and start packing some packages. Have a good one.